That's what the Morse had I said. Yes.
You get a check. You get a check. You get a check.
This is,
However you want it to be presented on
came over here and tell me.
board certificates.
Came up here and told me you needed.
Like the public. Yeah. For achievement. So however you want it.
You don't know what all is. See, when I get your age, people will remember me. I told them.
Thank you so much.
Man, police
did you get my email from last night? And it was late.
years ago. I've just been 15.
No, that, you got that one. For
2 in
some
the
reason I
morning.
couldn't put it in my scent, but, I printed out
He told my son, he said, you did me a favor one time, so
just
let
in
you
case
slide. Tell him I said
you
so.
need them.
I said, what'd you do? He said, I ran a
I
red light.
emailed them to you too, but
2 o'clock in the morning.
I remember Mr. Sargent's dad. I remember his dad coming and breaking up when I was in high school. Came and broke up our graduation party and recognized me immediately. He said, you. And I was like, oh Lord. And we were in this and it was awkward. Very awkward.
I won't go about that far in fact, so.
Yes.
The only thing that was surprised my friend.
Mr. McManus.
You're, hey,
Is that
it's
just
right there on the end of the wall.
he's a funny guy with the joke.
did I don't even know what my badge is. I turned around and went back home to get it, but I get a new one.
All right, thank you.
And I got pink one too, a bigger one. Oh, there you go. Just hadn't come in yet.
Bigger than these?
Yeah, remember his was a little teeny one, and everybody wanted to have a guy number. So he gets one that says chair, and my baby says one. So gotcha. I want him to find the one that says.
I'll remember that for next time y'all set up.
Jason did share with you that we're gonna, I'm gonna call him right off to, because he's gonna ask you to. Okay. very good, thank you.
Not yet, they're not ready yet. But when you go to log in, if you're going into here, they changed everybody's passwords again. So you need to call Steve, and I will give you Steve's number, and you've got 4 minutes, you can do it. While that number hits 0, Steve will answer, he just reset.
I got an email from Assembly saying reset password.
Oh, you already did it? No, this is just the, I don't understand what something is exactly. But when I tried to, they reset mine on Friday, I got her today, it didn't have the password. Since Friday, today's Monday. Oh. That's probably Josie.
Look at that. Oh, you are here.
Next to me.
I didn't know we were having this. I like those. I practiced with my pajamas years ago. It's like, you don't know what to do with
Turn around and went back.
Right.
Help me remember.
my daughter. What am I supposed to do? I said, look, I said, make it up. I said, it's English. That's yes.
Oh crap, it's in the car. No, I forgot. My Robert's rules are in the car. But, cute. Jason's gonna do it right. If you don't say it the right way, he'll correct you. But you know, red, the third word has to so no, like, I think before, we were just 15.
So we're gonna take turns on this coming month. I got help with 7:30. It takes a good, I did all the traffic though, so I can tell you what's like. You are.
Good morning. This meeting is called to order. Ms. Bowie, would you please call the roll?
Good morning. Pete Wildebohr,
Present?
Pat Bradford, Josie Barnhart,
Here.
Stephanie Craybill,
Here.
Melissa Mason,
Here.
Hugh McManus, and Stephanie Walker.
Here.
The purpose of this special called meeting of the New Hanover County Board of Education is to hear an appeal of the administration's decision to prohibit Ms. Sandy Isles from being on the premise of New Hanover County Board of Education meetings or committee meetings. This meeting is being recorded, and I remind everyone to speak loudly and clearly. I will now briefly turn it over to our board attorney, Jason Weber, to ask each member individually if they can consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence that is presented. Mr. Weber?
Good morning, board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me get settled here, and then I will go through, and what I'll do is ask each member that same question, and I will start with Mr. Wildebohr. Mr. Wildebohr, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based only on the evidence presented in the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bradford, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence presented in the hearing?
I can.
Ms. Barnhart, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence presented in the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Craybill, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence presented in the hearing?
Yes.
Mr. McManus, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence presented in the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Walker, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence presented in the hearing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Weber, I believe you omitted Ms. Mason.
I'm so sorry. Ms. Mason, can you consider this matter fairly and impartially based on the evidence presented in the hearing?
Yes.
My apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the agenda by Ms. Bradford. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Mason. All in favor of approving the agenda as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. The board hearing procedures were provided to the parties prior to this meeting. Those procedures will be followed as we proceed through the agenda. As a reminder of those procedures, the administration will give their oral presentation first. Ms. Isles will then give her oral presentation. The parties will each have 15 minutes to make oral presentation to the board, including any time they choose to reserve for rebuttal. This time limit may be extended by the board's discretion. Presentations will be timed to ensure compliance. During their presentations, either party may reference records in the administrative record on appeal, which has been provided to the parties and to each board member prior to this hearing. Legal rules of evidence do not apply. The board has the authority to ask questions of both parties, to exclude extraneous information or information that is duplicated, to extend time if needed, and otherwise to maintain an efficient and fair appeal hearing. No new evidence will be allowed by either party unless the board determines by majority vote that additional information is necessary to prevent a threat of substantial unfairness. There will be no witness testimony and no cross-examination of either party. The board may ask each party questions after their oral presentations. I now call on the administration to give their oral presentation. Please identify yourself for the record, including name and position and title. Please remember to speak loudly and clearly.
Good morning. Eddie Anderson. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Operations.
You may begin.
All right. Before we begin, or to begin, I'd first like to show two videos in question. The first being a video on September 20th following the board town hall.
I am very confident in what I have done in my role as a board member. Got an EDI director.
And what have you done? For students with disabilities.
Ladies, the definition of bullying has your pictures, not mine. Let's just.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, my
I
God.
would love that.
That's what happened.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, out of respect for our support staff who has to close the building, if we could start making our way outside.
You're a leader. Step down. Like you've never walked that. Resign. Resign. You checked out anyhow. Resign.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close the building down. If we can start making our way outside. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
All right. Mr. McManus, good night, sir. Am I running for re-election? Am I running for re-election? Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Actually,
And this second video is from a regular board meeting on November 1st. I promise you it's not as long. But I wanted to show the entire video.
if you don't get intervened by saying I haven't done that, my analysis because I sent it to the regarding. You hear what I said to you today. You lied, you called me a bully, and it's not right. You have failed to advocate for more staff. You have failed to ask for more funding. You have failed to get more ED staff and TAs. Everything I called for. You're a liar. You haven't done your job. Good ready to get off the board. Because I fought for teachers. I fought for teachers. I gave them support. Go ahead and laugh. You stuck at your job and you haven't supported sexual assault victims either.
Thank you. The reason I start with those videos is because that's really what's in question. Our job was to review the videos to determine if there was a board policy violation. The trespass notice was issued after we reviewed the board policy, determined there was a policy violation, and in consultation with law enforcement, determined that the trespass notice was in order. Specifically, I'm referring to Board Policy 5020, which is included in Exhibit C, or Exhibit G, sorry, of your booklet there. Item D talks about conduct standards. And violations of policy or behavior that interferes with or threatens to interfere with the operation of a classroom, an employee's office, office area, or school or facility open to parents or guardians or the public. Item 2, using loud and/or offensive language, swearing, cursing, or displaying temper. And item 4, any behavior that disrupts the operation of a school, classroom, central office, or admin facility. At both of these events, Ms. Isles' actions and behavior interfered with the orderly operation of the event. Ms. Isles' actions and behavior was using loud and offensive language, and she displayed temper. Law enforcement in both cases had to intervene. She had approached the dais, and at the second event, refused to comply with the request of law enforcement to calm down and stop yelling. Ms. Isles had presented an appeal to the original trespass order. That appeal was on November 17th, 2022, and it's included in your packet as Exhibit C. Ms. Isles presented documentation of correspondence between herself and Ms. Adams and claims Ms. Adams' statements were false and that she, Ms. Adams, was the aggressor. In our review of all the documents provided by Ms. Isles, they did not substantiate these claims. I do not believe that Ms. Adams acted in an aggressive or threatening manner, and the trespass notice was issued solely on Ms. Isles' actions and behavior at the two events previously referenced. While Ms. Isles did express remorse, no additional documentations provided justified the actions or behavior or refuted the evidence that the actions and behavior were a violation of board policy. A letter denying the appeal was sent to Ms. Isles from myself on December 1st, 2022, and is included in your packet as Exhibit D. That concludes the presentation, and I'll reserve any time for remaining for rebuttal.
We have 4 minutes and 25 seconds. Okay. Board members, do you have any questions? First off, thank you for the presentation. Board members, do you have any questions for the administration at this time? Anyone have any questions?
I have one.
Ms. Barnhart.
Would there have been anything different that you would have done looking back and reviewing this evidence?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Craybill?
Do you feel that this behavior was something that is allowed at our board meetings, or do you feel like this was something that was definitely more substantial than other kind of people acting out?
I did not take my personal feelings into consideration. I purely looked at it in comparison to the board policy, and felt that it was a violation of your policy.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Walker?
Hey, when, hi, Mr. Anderson. When you said that you didn't find evidence of any accusation against Ms. Adams, did you investigate hard? I mean, we didn't really hear all the audio on that particular recording.
That's really, that's not what I was tasked to do.
Okay, thank you.
I reviewed this and made a determination based solely on the actions of Ms. Isles at the 2 events referenced in the video, and made the decision based on her actions, behavior, and whether or not that was a violation of board policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. McManus?
Question, and this may not be your responsibility, but under Exhibit B, there's some small print screenshots of some texting, which are hard to read.
You see that? It's bigger in the first
bigger.
part.
No, there's a couple continue, there's bigger.
Oh, okay. Stop. I want to read.
You read them probably, they just.
Pages aren't numbered.
Thank you.
In the same section. Any other questions for the administration? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And again, you have 4 minutes and 25 seconds for rebuttal, if needed. I now call, thank you again. I now call on Ms. Isles to give her oral presentation. Ms. Isles. And again, you will be afforded 15 minutes also, and you may reserve any time if you'd like to at the end for rebuttal.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'm Sandy Isles. I do have a copy of my oral presentation. I wanted to ask the board if I could give each of you a copy of it so you can follow along.
We need to take a vote on that. So is there a motion to allow Ms. Isles to hand out her?
I move to accept that document.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
It passes 6-1.
Board members, this is Jason Weber, Board Attorney. I would recommend, if this is a new document, that you also ask Ms. Isles to provide a copy to the administration. And if the administration were to pass anything out, I would ask that they also provide a copy to Ms. Isles.
Thank you.
I can give it, Stephen?
You can give him mine.
Well, no, I would like to see what you have this. Stephen?
Ms. Isles, you may begin your presentation.
This morning, I stand before you as a loving mom, passionate advocate for all children, and as is true with every person in this room, an imperfect human being. Today, I respectfully request that the board rescind the trespass notice in full, or at the very least, agree to a probationary period. I am deeply concerned that this decision was made without notice or full investigation of the facts surrounding these incidents. And even more troubling, it does not appear that Ms. Adams has faced any consequence for threatening, bullying, intimidating, and harassing me. Ms. Adams threatened and intimidated me on September 17th because she did not like that I made a factual statement on social media, and you can see that in Exhibit B. I had stated that in regards to the calendar discussion, Ms. Adams believed it would be irresponsible to go back on her decision. That is a fact. I also stated that she owns a leadership training business. That is also a fact and is public record. I did not name her business, nor did I disclose any confidential information. And then I questioned her belief that she should not go back on her decision. I found this surprising because I believe strong leaders humble themselves when mistakes have been made and should work diligently to try to solve them. My statement was fair, as she served in a leadership role as an elected board member and regularly discussed her passion and experience for developing young leaders from the dais. This was a matter of public concern, and I discussed this concern with fairness in a public forum. I did not attack Ms. Adams. I disagreed with her words as a leader and public official. I found it disturbing that Ms. Adams felt it was appropriate to threaten me and use her position of power to intimidate and attempt to silence me from speaking on this matter. Ms. Adams approached me twice and continued her attacks after the September 20th town hall when she intimidated me by leaning into my personal space and pointing her finger in my face while berating me and calling me names. As defined in Policy 4329, bullying is repeated, unwanted, aggressive behavior that typically involves a real or perceived imbalance of power. That imbalance of power is why Ms. Adams' actions are so concerning. Because as a board member, she had control over my children's education and had direct influence over our superintendent, who can make directives to his staff, including my children's principals and teachers. I was worried about retaliation. It also says bullying may consist of either physical, verbal, or nonverbal behavior. The policy goes on to say that bullying and harassment behavior violates this policy when it creates a hostile environment. Ms. Adams violated this policy on each of these points. She used her power to intimidate and threaten me when she pointed in my face and while verbally berating me, calling me names and making false accusations. She also made a written threat and non-verbally mocked me when I defended myself. This created an incredibly hostile environment for me as Ms. Adams aggressively initiated contact with me on her own accord. She used her power and imbalance of power to bully and harass me. And even more concerning, Mr. Silverstein is trying to apply this policy to me when I was the victim of bullying and harassment. The unprovoked attacks continued into the November 1st board meeting, when Ms. Adams once again decided to use her power to make disparaging statements against community members and personally attack our character and reputation, again creating an incredibly hostile environment for those who received her attacks. It is unfortunate that Ms. Adams chose to use her last minutes on the board to intentionally cause harm to really good people who only have pure motives to protect children and staff. As her last act as a board member, she had the opportunity to unite us, but instead chose to divide and create conflict. She willingly and intentionally made misleading statements, knowing we have advocated for teachers, for higher pay, increasing staff, safe working environments, better tools, and improved work culture, as shown in Exhibit C, which is an email where I begged her to support teachers at Forest Hills just hours before she made this attack. I have receipts to show she saw this email prior to making these attacks. So to imply that teachers would ever face retribution by us is simply not based in fact, because we repeatedly advocated on their behalf. She knowingly and intentionally made misleading statements during a public meeting, causing harm against community members. Policy 5020, Exhibit G, states that superintendent may deny an individual permission to come into a school facility. It does not say shall or must, but provides discretion based on circumstances. It is very concerning that this decision was made without full consideration of facts or understanding of the circumstances in which these incidents occurred. My actions were 100% in self-defense of Ms. Adams' attacks, and I reject any assertion that may suggest otherwise. It does not appear that Mr. Silverstein, who initially sent the letter to me, made a good faith effort to resolve or even try to understand the situation, as he never contacted me before imposing this excessively harsh ban. I cannot understand why Mr. Silverstein or Dr. Faust did not contact me to discuss concerns, especially since Dr. Faust knows I handle difficult meetings with grace and understanding, as he and I have worked together productively to address concerns regarding my own child's access to her education. What problem does this trespass notice solve that could not have been resolved with a 15-minute phone conversation? Should the public expect decisions to be made on half-truths? Or should the public expect a fair investigation before such harsh penalties are put in place? At Friday's retreat, Ms. Crable stated, "When you are surprised, you tend to go into emotional mode versus being logical and rational and coming prepared to have the discussion." The last thing I expected was to be attacked by an elected official at a public meeting. I was completely caught by surprise on both occasions, and because I am human, I responded emotionally and verbally defended myself. Ms. Crable, it appears you understand that this is a natural human reaction, particularly when one feels threatened. As a Christian, I strongly believe in forgiveness and redemption. I embrace that we are all imperfect. I do not believe in revenge, retribution, retaliation, which drives my passion for fair behavior practices in our schools. I believe we should all be given an opportunity to learn and improve. Ms. Bradford, Mr. Wildeboer, you have both been very public with your faith, and the core message of Christianity is one of forgiveness. As Jesus said to the woman who stood before the group at the temple courts, "Go and sin no more," he did not punish her or shame her or even put her on trial as I am facing here. To the board, I ask, who's going to cast the first stone? What kind of culture do you want in our district? Do you want a culture that allows for redemption and forgiveness? Or do you want to perpetuate the district's infamous reputation for retaliation, intimidation, and bullying that has been on display by past boards for decades? 4 of you recently won your seat on this board because the public is angry and fed up with the exact behaviors Ms. Adams demonstrated. You have the opportunity to put us on a new path, change the culture of this district, and set expectations while preserving parent rights. This is a time for a fresh start. I take responsibility for my actions. I regret that I took Ms. Adams' bait, and I wish I had not responded to her attacks. These were isolated incidents that will not happen again, and it certainly is not characteristic of my behavior at board meetings for the past few years, as I have never been involved in any altercation or conflict, nor have I disrupted the business of the board. These events occurred after each meeting had adjourned. I've watched some truly horrific behaviors from community members at these meetings. I've watched people swear at board members, repeatedly refuse to leave, halt the meetings. I've watched physical and verbal altercations take place, but it does not appear any of them faced a trespass notice as I did, as many of them continue to show up month after month. Nor does it appear Ms. Adams has been held accountable or tends to be held accountable for her actions. Clearly, I'm not a safety threat, and I believe everyone in this room agrees. For these reasons, I request this ban be lifted and that I be met with forgiveness and understanding, and that full consideration be made for the circumstances surrounding these events. Because after all, like everyone here, I'm an imperfect person, and we all deserve an opportunity to make amends. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions? I do want to mention, we have 6 minutes and 24 seconds for rebuttal, if you choose to use that time. Ms. Craybill.
Ms. Isles, although I don't feel that Ms. Adams' behavior is in question here, because we are here for a hearing on your behavior, but I am interested, if you felt so afraid of Ms. Adams, did you file a complaint with the board chair or with the superintendent?
That's a really interesting question, Ms. Crable, because I would have filed a complaint with you, and I could have filed an Ethics 360 complaint, but remember I said I don't believe in revenge, retribution, or retaliation. I don't believe in punitive practices. I believe in giving people an opportunity to resolve these situations. I certainly did not expect a second attack at the November 1st meeting. We also have to look at the imbalance of power here, because although you don't believe Ms. Adams' actions should be considered in this case, that is absolutely what initiated this entire situation. It was her actions. She chose to come to me when I was standing completely alone. I was not trying to initiate with her. I was not trying to cause conflict. She contacted me, or walked up to me. The other thing with that imbalance of power, you would be asking me to file a complaint against a board member who has the power and authority to review that complaint and make that decision. There would have been no fair outcome. I could not have won this. There is absolutely no way that I had no recourse to a true and fair review of this situation. So even had I filed a complaint, I have zero faith that the board, especially Ms. Adams, would have agreed that she was in violation.
Ms.
And I'd
Barnhart?
like to make a point to that because as board members, we took an oath and we would have to recuse ourselves in that situation. So while I understand your fear of filing a complaint, we would be obligated to step away if we were not able to make a
Can
fair
I
and balanced.
follow up with that? So my understanding is if I file an Ethics 360 complaint, it ultimately would have gone to Dr. Faust. He would have had to have made a decision against his boss. I don't see that that would have been in my favor.
I did have a question because I felt reading along with you and listening to what you had said, I do agree with Ms. Crable with the fact that you are on trial for violating a policy of ours. And so because of that, it seemed most of this presentation, was it not really acknowledging those charges in particular of whether or not your actions violated policy,
So
but rather a transfer of blame to Ms. Adams
Nope.
and intended for her to be the reason why you did those things?
So actually, I did bring up policy 4329, and I mentioned that I feel that that policy was being improperly applied to me because I was the victim of bullying and harassment. I was not the aggressor in that situation. And I also would say that I reference policy 5020, which states that the superintendent may deny an individual permission, but it gives discretion based on circumstances. And that is what I'm asking for here. It does not say that I must be banned. It says that there is discretion within their decision and they have flexibility.
And so can I ask a point of clarification
Go ahead.
with that? Mr. Weber, this might be a you question because we are supposed to be making the case with the evidence on hand. So in her referencing those policies, 4329 and 7311, are those allowed
Those
to be?
are Exhibit G.
Oh, they're Exhibit G,
Yep.
okay.
And I do want to remind all board members that this is time for questions, not a debate. Ms. Isles. So, Ms. Bradford,
Okay.
did you have a question?
Yes, I do.
thought you did.
But I'm tempering that against what you just said. I'm just going to do it. Ms. Isles, in that video, I see you trespass from human emotion into anger, into offensive language, into very disturbing display of temper, aggressive movements with your hands, your face, and it was you that followed her to the dais. So you put our faith on trial here. So I ask you, how familiar are you with 1 Corinthians 13:4?
Not familiar with that.
It talks about operating in love and peace and
Yes,
joy
I
and
understand.
long-suffering and gentleness and temperance, which I did not see displayed
Point of
on that
order.
video.
Point of order?
I don't believe we're debating religion at this point, so I don't believe that question is even in line with.
You're
this.
fine. She attacked my faith.
No,
and
it's
so I'm-
my faith.
I'm coming
It's
back to
not- it's
ask
not
you,
an attack
do
in
you
any
believe
way.
that
It
you
is my faith.
operated in love? My question is, do you believe you operated in love?
So I would say we are all imperfect humans, and if you have you ever been threatened by a person in authority, a public official who has gotten into your face, berated you completely unprovoked as you're standing completely alone? Have you ever been in that position? Because when a person in power, an elected official who has control over your child's education, threatens you and verbally berates you and calls you names, that is terrifying. And I responded with a normal human reaction when you are afraid and threatened and worried for your safety and your children's safety.
Ms. Isles, did you ever consider in either one of those altercations walking away?
So if you notice, I did walk away and she came back a second time and she continued the altercation in which I did walk away before she walked away. So yes, I did.
Ms. Craybill?
Ms. Isles, are you familiar with our rules of decorum that are posted on the door out there that says no one can approach the dais?
That's during a board meeting.
That's our rules of decorum from
So
the
my
time we
under-
start this meeting until the time we enter the building, until the time we leave.
So my understanding was that was during a board meeting, and both of these incidents happened after a board meeting. And if you notice, there are members of the public who do approach the dais after meetings and during breaks. So if that is the rule, I would request that it be upheld 100% at all meetings moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. Walker?
Well, just to clarify that one thing before I ask my question, it does say gavel to gavel, I think, when the meeting is in order. I believe you can't approach the dais, but I mean, we can confirm that. So my, I guess, question is, we were presented evidence of incidents that happened before the meeting began between you and Ms. Adams, do you feel that, because we watched the first video where she comes around and she approaches you, do you feel that that was an extension of what had happened outside the board meeting and that she was displaying to you? I mean, according to policy 5020 as well, that basically talks about conduct standards, it does say school system employees, school board members and volunteers must treat parents, guardians, and their members of the public with courtesy and respect. You feel like she was respecting you?
She absolutely made an intentional decision to come attack me because of a comment I had made on social media. And that is what that initial confrontation was about. She was asking me about the post, which is why my comment on social media and our messages are relevant to this case, because that is what sparked this entire situation.
Ms. Ellis, I had a question. In the November meeting, when you started raising your voice, I won't say yelling, but raising your voice, what was your location when you started?
I was in the back of the room, and I will say that Ms. Adams looked directly at me when she made that comment, and I was deeply offended by that.
And where did you end up at the end of that?
I walked towards the front, but I still remained 10, 15, or even more feet away from her. You can see on the video I'm not on it because at no point did I attempt to physically get close to her.
Ms. Bradford?
Follow up on that too. On the 20th, at one point you had 4 law enforcement officers between you, and then before it was over there were 6 safety representatives between you. And did you get any indication at that point you needed to just back away?
I did back away. I walked away from the dais, and Ms. Adams came back for a second confrontation, and at no point did law enforcement say anything to me.
Bill?
My question was around yours, that I didn't see any threatening behavior on behalf of Ms. Adams on November 1st.
So you don't believe that?
You were in the back of the room and started yelling before, and she was up in the front.
So
Board members,
you
this
don't.
is Jason Weber, board attorney.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I would also encourage members to focus their questions on the evidence presented and to save deliberation and debate for after closed session, should there be a closed session.
I would like to respectfully respond to that publicly, since that was directed towards me, if that is okay.
Go ahead.
I think that it is incredibly threatening for any elected official to make a disparaging comment about the character of private citizens in a public meeting when we do not have the authority or ability to defend ourselves publicly in real time. That is absolutely threatening, and I will not say this part. It is threatening, and for you not to understand that is very concerning to me, and I think the entire community in New Hanover County should be concerned that you believe that.
Mr. McManus?
In what you wrote, and I don't want to read the whole thing, but that you've watched horrific behaviors from other community members at our meetings. You've watched people swear at board members, repeatedly refuse to leave, halt the meetings, watch physical and verbal altercations. Does not appear any of them face a trespass notice. As many of them, as you did, as many of them continue to show up month after month. I think that's why we're having this meeting. We need
Hugh, ask
to,
a question.
the question is, do you believe that that's why you're at this meeting?
I believe that I have been singled out. I believe that really horrific behavior that is much worse than anything I did at a meeting. You have to remember, all of my responses were 100% self-defense. What the behaviors that we've seen at board meetings were instigated to cause conflict against the board. I did not instigate conflict. I responded to conflict and attacks that were imposed on me. When I have watched large groups be escorted out because they came with the intent to stop the meeting, but those people, it does not appear they received a trespass. I have watched a community member be escorted out multiple times because when they have been gavelled, they refuse to stop speaking. They refuse to sit down. I have watched people refuse to leave the meetings. And Mr. McManus, you and I do not always agree on everything, but I think you can say, and you would agree, I have never been escorted out of a meeting. I sit in the back. I stay here for 6 hours, month after month after month. And if I had been, one, a safety threat, or if I had violated decorum, I certainly would never be allowed to stay here for 6+ hours every month.
Ms. Grable?
Ms. Isles, did you hear Ms. Adams call your name out at any point in time during a meeting?
So Ms. Adams said.
Did you hear her say your name?
She said advocates. And she looked directly
Thank
at
you.
two
That's all I
retired
wanted to hear.
teachers in
She
the
didn't
front,
say
and
your
she
name.
looked directly at me. She said advocates. And she admitted that she was speaking to me and others.
Ms. Mason?
Policy 5020. When you were interacting with Ms. Adams, part D, it talks about some of the disruptive behavior that's not tolerated. Were there any threats to do bodily, physical harm from Ms. Adams or
I
from you?
felt physically threatened when she got in my face and leaned over me while berating me. That was not a friendly gesture. That was a very threatening gesture.
But were there any verbal threats?
The written threat was given prior to that altercation.
Ms. Barnhart? Question?
I guess my question for you is, you've said that you are sorry for your actions. And so sitting here before us as a new board, my curiosity comes, have you extended that conversation to the person that created this? Have you extended that apology to her if you're sorry for that behavior? Or are you saying you're sorry to us as part of?
I regret that I responded to her attacks. I do not feel that there'd be any reason to engage with Ms. Adams further, as she's no longer on the board.
Thank you, Ms. Isles. At this time, the administration has reserved 4 minutes and 25 seconds for their rebuttal. You may use that time if you choose to at this time.
How much time does Ms. Isles have left?
She has 6 minutes and 24 seconds.
Thank you. I would just like to make a couple of quick points. I think we all know if Ms. Adams had acted in an inappropriate way, as claimed by Ms. Isles, there is a different process to address that, and that wasn't followed. There was a safety threat. Law enforcement felt there was a safety threat. We all felt there was a safety threat and acted in accordance with that threat. And lastly, Ms. Isles' response to Ms. Adams' comments, ironically, made me feel uncomfortable. It required law enforcement to intervene. I'm sure it made each one of you feel uncomfortable, and I'm sure it made others in the audience feel uncomfortable. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Barbara had her hand up first.
I'm sorry?
She had her hand up first.
Can we ask questions during a rebuttal?
That's a good question. We'll say, Mr. Weber?
That is at the board's discretion.
Well, we have 3 minutes and 25 seconds left, so if you have additional questions, I guess we can go ahead.
I almost forgot my question. At any point in what occurred, did you feel threatened by what the board member said?
No.
Thank you.
Ms. Walker?
I guess, and we can all probably think about this ourselves, watching the video, I know you just talked about the threat. Do you feel, or do any of us feel that Ms. Adams felt threatened since she came back around the dais? I didn't think she looked threatened. To me, if she felt physically threatened, she wouldn't have kept coming back. But I don't know, is that what your observation?
I mean, I can't speak for Ms. Adams and how she felt.
Well, and now law enforcement, I know in the first video they stepped up, but I don't see them escorting Ms. Isles out. I don't see them stopping Ms. Adams from coming back around the dais for another round of whatever was happening. So I don't know. I guess because you brought it up, the feeling of being threatened. She didn't feel threatened because if she did, she wouldn't have come back around. That's
Anybody else?
Yes. I remembered what it was. I want you to discuss for just a second the dais, the situation, and the decorum that involves the dais. But I made notes when I watched the video this time. There were 4 law enforcement officers, then there were 5. The major was on the phone calling someone during that. Don't know what he was doing, but it seems out of place to be on the phone unless you're asking for help. And then at that point, Mr. Silverstein got up there. We ended up with 6 people on the dais trying to calm the situation by just their physical presence. I feel disturbed and threatened when I watch the video. It makes me very uncomfortable. But I learned early on, I think I wanted to speak to Mr. McManus, or it may have been Ms. Crable, and I approached the dais maybe 2 years ago, and I was quickly told, no, you don't step on there. But most people don't know what that word is. They don't understand the decorum about approaching an elected official when they're sitting as an elected body. Can you talk about that for just a quick second?
Well, I think at the conclusion of most board meetings, board members, if they want to interact with the public, they come around. I myself have asked people not to, step on the dais and approach the dais, approach board members in that manner.
And I noticed in that video, Ms. Adams, when she does engage, she walks a little bit, and then she almost retreats behind the dais as if it's a legal barrier. And that's just my opinion in watching it multiple times, that she gets behind it as a defensive action. Did you notice that?
I did, and I think that is why law enforcement intervened at that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Ms. Isles, you have 6 minutes and 24 seconds if you'd like to use that for rebuttal.
I'm deeply concerned that New Hanover County Schools is implying that if threatening attacks are made quietly, that they are excused and only the response from the victim is punished. As I have stated, I take full responsibility for responding to Ms. Adams' attacks. I'm not proud, and I hope you recognize my response was in self-defense on both occasions. The only thing I can do moving forward is show you that this will not happen again. That is, should you choose to lift this ban. New Hanover County Schools can try to make me out to be a serious safety threat, but we all know that is not true. I was not the aggressor in this situation. And frankly, I find it appalling that this policy is being improperly applied to me when I am the victim of bullying and harassment. Ms. Adams was the aggressor and I was the victim of her attacks. My actions were 100% in self-defense of her unprovoked attacks. Some of you may not personally like me, and that's okay. You don't have to like me to recognize how Ms. Adams used her power to intimidate, threaten, bully, and harass, provoking me to respond. You don't have to like me to see how she intentionally made disparaging comments against the community, causing harm as her last act as a board member. What you're tasked with is using discretion to set precedents in our district. Is it okay for a board member or really any district leader to cause harm through intimidation, bullying, and threats? I sincerely hope that's not what this new board values. I'm a mom who simply loves her children. One of my daughters has an IEP, and I've experienced so much pain as I've had to beg New Hanover County Schools to educate her. I love my daughter more than I can express, and all I want for her and all children with disabilities is to receive the education they are required to receive. I want my daughter, every child in our district, to be seen as fully human and not defined by their challenges. So when Ms. Adams made her cruel attack on November 1st, it was deeply personal, and she knew it. Not just to me, but to the other parent who courageously spoke up to protect his child earlier that night. We should not have to fight so hard to protect our children. Our system's so broken, it's harming children, teachers, and parents, and Ms. Adams chose to attack a mom who begged her to fix the system. She had the power as a board member to support our teachers so they could better support children like mine. Instead, she chose to attack me and other community members. If you dismiss Ms. Adams' behavior and uphold this ban, you send a message to every parent and teacher that we should expect to be bullied, threatened, and intimidated if we speak up. It will send a message that the district's bullying and harassment policy only applies to some, and most definitely does not apply to board members, that you will be exempt. It would also tell the public that we are not afforded the right to notice and a fair investigation before punitive judgments are made. The facts are clear. You have a copy of Ms. Adams' written threat. You have a video of her initiating contact with me twice after the board meeting ended, completely unprovoked, and then she began to threaten me as she leans into my face, pointing her finger at me. And finally, we have the words from the dais attacking kind-hearted and caring community members. You will be setting a precedence for the entire community with this decision and setting the tone for the culture in which our children learn and our teachers work. This appeal is bigger than me. This appeal at its core is about an imbalance of power. the type of community we want, and the culture that you, our new board, will create? Do we allow this imbalance of power to hurt parents, teachers, and students? Or do we hold all community members equally accountable while recognizing our humanity and showing grace for imperfect human beings? I request this ban be rescinded in full, or in the alternative that I'm given a probationary period to show I'm genuine in my efforts to resolve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any further questions? Excuse me. Does anybody have any further questions for Ms. Isles?
I do.
Ms. Bradford?
Ms. Isles, have you and I ever had a phone conversation?
We attempted, but we were unable to connect.
That's what I want to ask you about. After this happened, you reached out to me to have a meeting. And I told you I couldn't do that because my work schedule, Christmas, whatever. So it never happened. At the time, I had no clue that this had occurred. You may have thought that we knew that this trespass order thing had happened, but I was clueless. Do you see any conflict of interest in the fact that you reached out to me? I don't know what you wanted to talk about, but I'm asking, did you contact any other board members, and did you have conversation with any of them after this trespass notice was given to you?
So I requested, I honestly don't remember the timeline on when I received the trespass notice, because I received it many days after it was actually written, and I don't remember when I had reached out to you. But if you recall, I did sincerely congratulate you for the race, for winning your seat, and I acknowledge that you ran a better race. And I had reached out to you, if you remember, because I wanted to speak about seclusion and restraint, because at past board meetings, you and I had spoken. We had talked about seclusion and restraint. We've always been very cordial with one another. There's never been any animosity whatsoever, despite being complete opposite ends on the political spectrum. And I think that goes to show that at board meetings I'm not creating conflict. And so I had reached out to you because at one point you were staunchly against the use of seclusion, and I noticed that your stance on that had changed, and I wanted to speak with you before I wanted to speak with you and share some of the information that was in that email that I had sent to Ms. Adams about the UCURA program, and to show you that I have worked really hard to bring solutions, proactive solutions to our teachers so that they could feel empowered when they're working with children. And, you know, when we stand at the podium, we get 2 minutes. I don't have an opportunity to share full context. I do not have the opportunity to grow in great detail. And I have 2 minutes to make the biggest impact that I can. And I come with passion, but I'm not able to have a calm, rational conversation because the board doesn't respond back. It's not a conversation. And so I wanted you to know, coming onto the board, that I've done a lot of work behind the scenes that has not been made public, and that my goal 100% has always been to protect children and teachers and have teachers feel empowered with tools that work so that they can support children effectively.
Ms. Graybill?
I want to follow up on Ms. Bradford's question. Did you have any conversations with anybody else on this board or people close to members on this board about this case?
I have spoken with Ms.
Board members, this is Jason Weber, your board attorney. As your board attorney, I would encourage you again to focus your questions on the evidence in the record and the parties' presentations today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, I want to thank
Could I make one comment, though? It was requested to me by a community member who is here today that I send an email to the board before this meeting, and I said that I felt that would be unethical, and I did not do so.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both parties. I will now entertain a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A and 3 to consult with the board attorney to preserve attorney-client privilege. As a reminder, the board will return to open session for deliberation and make a decision. Do I hear a motion to enter into closed session?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Bradford. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Walker. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? We are now in closed session.
I can take my notes.
Yes, please bring your notes in.
And that's why
I did, yeah, I haven't, and I actually touched base with Penny, I was going No, no, no. Take care. I love your orange sweater. It's a good color. Oh, yes.
Okay. Josie, how did you get in, or are you in? What? To what? To the deal.
Okay, if I could have the board members come back to their seats, please. I could ask the board members to please come back to their seats.
Yes, sir. Did we turn these back in when this is over? Okay, I thought so. Let's hope we keep-
Welcome back. We are now in open session. Board members, we will now deliberate and make a decision. The floor is open to any board member to begin.
Call
Mr.
the
McManus.
Call question?
We don't have a question.
We don't have a
I got a question.
Would you like
There's no motion.
Call question.
would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to call question.
What's the question?
We don't have a
There is
motion
no
to vote on.
I know we have.
Mr. McManus, you'd have to make a motion to end debate, and then
Right.
we'd have to vote on it.
Yeah.
We do have to vote,
There
of
is no
course,
motion, though.
Well, what is your motion, Mr. McManus?
to vote.
To vote?
Vote on
Yes.
what?
Vote to end debate.
You have to state the motion.
Thank you. Have you ever looked at our little form that says call the question? That means you have to vote, discuss it.
Right, but what would you need to make a motion so we know what.
Okay, I am making a motion to call the question. Also debate, also
make
vote
it
for
back
both.
that.
In debate, okay? Ms. Crable?
The, if Mr. Weber is still on there, would you please clarify that we have to have a substantive something to vote on before we can call the question to vote on it? Could you just explain that quickly?
Mr. Weber?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, at this point, we do need to have a motion whether to uphold or to deny the administrative decision. So, Mr. McManus, would you like to let us know?
Oh, that's what.
Mr. Chair, you can make that motion if you so desire.
So, Mr. Weber, would you like to, Ms. Crable had a question, Mr. McManus called the question, but we don't actually have the answer of what the question is at this point, correct?
And I'm sorry, was that question for me? I just signed
Yes,
back
sir.
on.
Mr. McManus has called the question, but we don't really have a question, we don't have a motion to call the question on at this point. Is that correct? We need to have a motion?
That's correct. So at this point in the agenda, it's time for the board's deliberation and decision. The board acts through motions and votes, so there would need to be a motion in order, and a second, in order for someone to call the question. In other words, to force a vote, that would require a 2/3 vote in approval in order to, call an immediate vote on the matter. But right now, this is the time for the board deliberation.
Okay, so let's open the floor to deliberation. Ms. Crable, you had your hand
No,
up?
I was just going to make a motion so that we had something to deliberate on, but if we don't have to have the motion, then I won't, but
Okay.
is that right? We can talk without making a motion?
Correct. So one way to focus debate would be if an individual wants to make a motion for a proposed decision, and if there is a second, then the board can debate before a vote. The board can otherwise deliberate. If, there is no one has a proposed decision that they want to put before the board, it's at your discretion.
Okay, well, back to Mr. McManus. Would you like to make a motion? At this point, no? Okay. The floor is open to anyone else who would like to deliberate.
I'll jump in.
Ms. Craybill?
Okay, so a couple things that, should we just do one at the time, or are we going to go around the circle? I mean, because I have...
Why don't we start with you and we'll go around the circle, that sounds.
Okay. So, first of all, I'm looking at I have to come back to the question about, Ms. Isles said that she talked to one of us, based on Ms. Bradford's question. And I would like to know which one of us, and since we can't ask her, one of us is going to have to say, which one of us talked with her, and I think that that person should not be allowed to be part of this discussion.
Okay, well, I know in her letter, she said that she talked to me at a voting place, which, she did.
That would be before this happened, though.
Yes.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but...
Based on the dates.
Yeah.
Didn't you, Ms. Bradford, ask the question, have you talked to anybody else? When you were asking about reaching out to you,
Yeah.
did you not ask that question?
Yeah, she reached out to me after November 20,
Right.
and the election was on the 8th. So in pre-election, in early voting, it would not have mattered.
So did anybody talk to her after the trespass letter was issued? That is my question. So I thought I heard her allege that she did. And if I misunderstood that, then, please correct me.
Mr. Chairman.
I did not talk to her.
I did.
Chair, I was just going to say, I'm not going to go round robin about this. We have all said that we can deliberate today, and I think we should just stick with that. And if we have to take a vote on it, then let's do it, because I think we all should have a say in what happens today. I don't think we should be excluding any board member.
Well, we were advised by our lawyer not to speak to the administration and not to speak to Ms. Isles. And so if we did, then that could compromise all of the decisions. So I just want everyone to look each other in the eye and say, I did not talk with Mr. Anderson, Mr. Silverstein, Dr. Faust, or I did not talk with Ms. Isles about this case. So that is that's what I want to lead off with.
And I think Mr. Weber did that at the beginning, so I think we...
He just said, can you make an unbiased decision? I just want to know if one of our board members has talked with her.
It
wasn't me.
No. Can we just
Okay.
move on?
All right.
And board?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Weber?
No, I was just going to weigh in and say, like at the beginning of the meeting, your role in each of you needs to decide whether you can consider this fairly and impartially, and again, based solely on the evidence presented in the record.
Right.
If you feel you can't do that, then, it may make sense for you to recuse yourselves, but if you can, that's the decision you have to make.
Okay. Let's carry on with our conversation. Anyone else have anything? Well, Mr. McManus, do you have anything to share? I think this is a very...
I didn't talk to him.
I definitely did not talk to her, except for that one point at the polling place. And we didn't have a subsequent, a big discussion about it. It was, she just said that she felt like she was sorry for what she had done. I think this is a very important decision. I think we need to really consider all the facts that were presented today as we move forward in our discussion and in our decision. Ms. Bradford, do you have anything to share?
Yes. I was watching the second video on the 20th, the night of the 20th. I was watching that as it happened remotely. I had left and gone home to watch it. I felt physically threatened at home by what I observed. Rightly or wrongly, I did. If I look at policy 5020, right? Unauthorized, disruptive, or dangerous visitors, threatening, disruptive, dangerous behavior, acts in a threatening or disorderly manner, violating the board policy, I can't argue with that. Rightly or wrongly, I felt threatened, and we have to feel safe doing this job.
Ms. Walker.
Well, I would like to say, just based on the evidence here, like what has been presented, like I honestly cannot ignore Ms. Adams' behavior. And as far as safety is concerned, I'm more than anybody, and the rest of us, 4 of us that have been on this board for 2 years, knows what it's felt like to feel threatened quite a lot. And I don't feel like the actions I saw in that video were her feeling threatened. If she's going to come back around first, that's one point. I know we don't want to encourage this behavior. Absolutely, I will say that. As someone that, you know, worked on rules of decorum, written rules of decorum, I understand that we had to take charge of our meetings, and we don't want certain behaviors. We have to put that in policy if we really, really mean that. You know, which I encourage if we want to. I don't think we should get into the weeds on it because the chair ultimately has the power to decide decorum rules. But at the same time, I feel like the sentence had been passed. It's been 2 months already. I think if this board wants to send a message, we can say we do not condone this behavior, and then we absolutely, it shouldn't happen. I think she has said that she won't do it again, and if we have to come up with a decision that meets both things in a compromise, we should. I don't like I said, being on the side of the dais where I've felt threatened at times. I've had occasions where it's been much worse than that. So that is my opinion on the matter, and I hope we come up with a decision that's going to be a fair decision.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Ms. Mason?
For me, I am looking at this from not policy, but from the law that supersedes it, and that's our constitutional rights. And so for me, if it's a violation of the First Amendment right, that comes across as problematic for me. That's something that I very firmly believe in. And our lawyer spoke about if it was a true threat, or if there was a fear of bodily harm. And in just observing, and I've watched those videos over and over and over, if there was fear of physical threat, an individual does not come to their attacker more than once. I watched Ms. Isles walk away twice, and I watched Ms. Adams walk away and then approach again. So when it comes down to it, I agree with Ms. Walker. I think that we need to come to some sort of compromise. We cannot be violating an individual's First Amendment rights, and we can't be violating any kind of open meetings law. She should be able to voice her concerns, and if there is no alternative in public for her to do that, then I believe that violates that law.
Thank you. Before Ms. Barnhart speaks, I would like to remind everyone that what went on in that room between the attorney and us was not something that we need to share in public. Ms. Barnhart?
I think there is a few things that got pulled up in this, and our job is to look at solely this evidence. And I think that's where the disconnect is happening, because we're looking at a policy that I believe Ms. Isle clearly violated. However, it does not discredit some of the things that she was concerned about other people. But looking at this, I have to look at and ask this question. By her own admission, she had a reaction that was not acceptable by the previous board. And so it comes to me, the question becomes, is it the individual's job to be able to contain their own reactions in order to participate in public meetings? And this is the question that I've been deliberating as we've listened and discussed and heard both sides of the story. So while it may be normal to have a responsive reaction and angry, she's a very passionate mom. I've listened to her for the last 2 years. I'm not allowed to take that into consideration in this hearing. And so knowing and seeing that, I look at it as our personal responsibilities when we are engaging in open meetings and with elected officials to maintain that professionalism. And that's what I have to say.
Ms. Graber?
All right, so going back and using Ms. Isles' words, we are setting the tone. And I couldn't agree more but the tone, I differ with her on the tone that we are setting, is that if we allow individuals to come into our meetings and start yelling whenever they want to start yelling, then we are setting the tone that this is acceptable. And when we watch, and a reminder, the First Amendment does not protect us from the consequences. We can say and do whatever we want, but there are consequences to that. And the DA has upheld that on many other situations outside of the education realm. So yes, we are setting the tone. And we are setting a precedent for future boards, and for all the people in the room, that they can stand back in this corner or that corner or anywhere in between and just start yelling. If you noticed, in the two meetings, the town hall on September 20th and the board meeting on November 1st, were two different scenarios. Is that Ms. Adams did come out in September 20th. They talked, one walked away, one walked away, one walked away, ended up over there at the dais with a lot of law enforcement. In the November 20th, when we're supposed to be wrapping up the meeting, and I can speak from this personally because I was standing over in that corner getting ready to do an interview, and then I saw Miss Isles coming towards me. She actually even said, "Stephanie," and I was going, what in the heck? I have not done anything. I did not realize that Miss Adams was standing right behind me. So I, at that point, did feel threatened that what's going to happen? She started yelling back here, and now she's yelling her way all the way up to the front. Law enforcement does not come usually unless we call them. Well, there's protocols, because they are not here to police our meetings. They are here to keep us and the public safe. But the mere fact that they all migrated without even being asked, to me, also sent out a message that we were in a threatening situation. Ms. Isles has said that she will not do it again. She talked about it wasn't her best moment, yet 6 weeks later she shows back up and completely uninstigated. Ms. Adams did not come out into the crowd to say anything to her. She was standing back in the corner talking to Dr. Faust, and then the behaviors are starting. So I am having a real hard time. And again, when she says, I felt helpless and endangered, yet she followed, Miss Adams to the dais. And so I don't feel that as a threatening, that I'm feeling threatened, that I'm going to pull out, whatever. So I'm having a hard time saying that this is appropriate. She violated our policies on 2 different occasions, and just yelling. And there's been so many things in the news that have happened where one little small thing leads to another. We just heard in a safety presentation, well, we can't include that in there, but we investigate everything. And so this is what, one little small thing does not, in your mind, take away that it might be a larger thing. So that is I am completely in the camp that we uphold the decision of the superintendent.
Ms. Walker?
Well, I will have to say that, because we're looking at the evidence here, we cannot ignore Ms. Adams' actions, because it is evidence that's provided to us that we've witnessed on the screen. I was there as well. I just don't think we can leave out and have a one-sided conversation because we're just looking at her violation of policy. Because, but at the same time, I will say that we don't have to, we can set a precedence here. We can say, we can uphold the decision, but I just feel like the ban of 12 months is too harsh. I just feel like we have the power here to say, this behavior is unacceptable, it was a violation of policy. We can say, well, if you're not going to do it again, then we can work with you. And I just think that there's room here for us to kind of acknowledge that there are more to it than just one side of an argument against a parent that comes here, and has generally been okay. Like, I mean, these incidences seem to me like they're surrounded with this one particular person that started off on screen somewhere else, and it continued on into the meetings. But yeah, I mean, I think we can acknowledge that we don't want the behavior, and we can acknowledge it was a violation, and we can say we do not want that, but we can also say that we don't need to do it for 12 months either.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Ms. Bradford?
Ms. Crable brings up a point that it escalated from 9/20 to the second meeting on November 1st. And while we forgive and we offer grace to hope that it doesn't happen again, there has to be a consequence for the if it was one time, it might make a difference in my thoughts, but the second time really, really unnerved me, because here's an individual that I had thought to be observed, you know, it was shocking. It was very shocking to me. And I think there's somewhat of a disconnect by saying, I'm the victim here. It was all a board member doing it to me, when it's clear on the video, second one, that the aggression is coming from the back corner of the room forward, and it doesn't stop until law enforcement steps in between. And that conduct cannot be condoned, cannot continue. It must be stopped immediately.
Ms. Barnhart.
Mr. Chair, I move to uphold the decision of the district in the trespassing.
Second.
We have a first and we have a second. Is there any further debate on that motion?
I would like to make an amendment to uphold it, but also to shorten the sentence or the decision by, I hate to use the word served, time already served. It's been 2 months. This person has been banned, Ms. Isles has been banned, and I feel like we can amend the motion to shorten the decision. I don't know what to call it.
So you basically want to suspend it, or not suspend it, to amend the motion to 2 months?
Yeah, yes.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second from Ms. Mason. Discussion on that motion. Ms. Crable. Again, we're discussing the amended motion at this point.
All I want to say is I don't agree, because she hasn't had a chance to even miss any meetings at all. Okay, so she was not allowed to attend the December meeting. That is the only one, if I am correct.
In the retreat.
Huh?
Don't acknowledge.
Pardon me?
I said, don't acknowledge the commentary.
Oh.
No, so I just want to make, no, I think it should be, if we're going to do it, and I can make another amended motion, I think it should at least be till the end of the school year. Because we have a lot going on coming up. We have a lot of things that are on the table for change, and I just think that we need to uphold it at least till the end of the school year, to give credence to the fact that our staff has evaluated it versus our policies, and if we are going to start not following our policies when it's too hard to make a decision, or because we feel bad for somebody, or because they cried in their testimony, then I just don't think that's appropriate.
Mr. Weber, I am correct that since we have a second amendment, we would discuss the second amendment and then the first amendment?
It depends on whether Ms. Crable is making a motion to amend the amendment.
Yes, I'll go ahead and do that. I will make a motion to amend Ms. Walker's, that we uphold the decision of the superintendent and we lessen the time to the end of the school year.
I'd second that.
Do we hear a second? We have a second from Ms. Barnhart. Yes, ma'am.
So this I guess is in discussion to the set amendment to my amendment.
Right.
Just to clarify for everyone out there, I think the end of the school year is too long. If people feel like 2 months is too short, then I think we should probably come to maybe another agreement. Do I have to make an amendment on the amendment, or I just want clarifying here, what do I have to do in order to amend that amendment? Because do we just keep going with amendments?
I guess we could. Mr. Weber, please weigh in on that.
The board could do that, or vote up or down the
Can I amend mine?
the current amendment to the previous amendment. If you want to simplify things, you can continue to discuss, and Ms. Crable could voluntarily, if she chose to do so, modify her proposed amendment.
Is it possible for us to discuss the ones we have on here and then amend later on if we need to? Because otherwise we'll just keep amending, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months,
Yeah.
8 months. So we have on the table right now.
There could be a motion to reconsider. So if the motion to amend the amendment passes or fails, there could be a subsequent motion to reconsider later in the debate.
Start voting.
Let's do that. So the amendment we have on the table now is Ms. Crable's motion to have the suspension or the What was what I wanted?
The time the time frame of the.
The timeframe for the school year.
Trespass.
Let's discuss that, and then if we want to reconsider, we can do that at the end.
Would my amendment have precedence over the second amendment, though, or not?
I believe we
Think they go
do
in
the
order?
most,
Yeah.
which
Mr.
one
Webb, you
should
start
we
from
discuss first?
Top down.
And I'm sorry, was there a third
No.
There's
motion
two
to amend?
amendments to the original motion.
So I'm sorry, so there was a
Debate mine
motion.
first?
We have two amendments to one motion. Which
So
do we start with?
Was there, did Ms. Walker make a subsequent amendment?
No.
To my motion or to
No,
Ms.
you asked
Craven's
the
motion?
question, did you actually make an official motion on top of my motion?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Okay, so the board is now considering Ms. Crayville's
Right.
motion to amend.
So let's
which
discuss that.
Which would extend
And
the
we'll call the
trespass
question.
decision through the end of the school year.
Oh, okay, yes. It's actually the assistant superintendent's letter, just to.
Okay,
to
sorry.
Specify.
Superintendent or superintendent's designee.
Designate. Okay, so we are discussing Ms. Crayville's motion to trespass Ms. Isles until the end of the school year. Only from,
To uphold the decision
right,
of the assistant superintendent and reduce the amount of trespass to the end of the school year.
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Let's discuss that, yes,
Right,
ma'am.
that's the debate. I just wanted to start the debate off if that
Yes,
was
please.
okay. I think it's good that we're talking about compromise. I still feel like, so the end of the school year is what, end of May? Is that what we're talking
So
about?
about 6 months.
I would say
Five,
June 3rd, I clarify, June 30th.
June 30th, that, in my opinion, is too long. I think she's, like I said, already been 2 months that she's been trespassed, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Does anybody want to check that? You know, I would say, you know, I would say 3 tops. I just don't think, I think we are setting precedents here. We are upholding the superintendent's decision. At the same time, we are saying what we think is, I guess, I don't want to use the word sentence. I feel like that's not right. Our decision to make it from 12 months, if we say it's been 2 months already, I think that should be counted. And I feel like I'd feel better about 3 months. I mean, it's not, I'm not amending it, but we're debating it right now,
Right,
so.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mr. McManus.
Call the question again to vote on Ms. Crayville's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion to.
Did it?
Actually, it's.
Is it?
And Mr. McManus has called the question, which is moving the previous question. That would require a 2/3
Yeah.
vote.
Okay. So, Mr. McManus is, do we need a second for that? No. We do not, I believe.
I don't think so.
We do not, okay.
Is it?
So we are basically going to, at this point, close discussion.
Debate.
Mr. McManus says,
I'm sorry, that Mr. McManus's motion requires a second. It's not
We have a
debatable.
I will second.
Ms.
But it
Craybill second.
requires a second and a 2/3 vote in
A
favor.
2/3
of
vote.
adoption.
So, Ms. Bowie, would you call?
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify? We are voting to vote? Are we voting
We're
now?
voting to
in
close the
discussion.
discussion.
Okay.
That's all we're doing is on the second motion.
Okay.
Ms. Bowie, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Wildebohr.
Aye.
Ms. Bradford.
Aye.
Ms. Barnhart.
Yes.
Ms. Craybill.
Yes.
Ms. Mason.
Yes.
Mr. McManus.
Yes.
And Ms. Walker.
Yes.
So that is a 7-0 vote. So now, what we have in front of us is Ms. Craybill's motion. Would you restate the motion, for me,
Yes,
please?
to uphold the decision of the assistant superintendent to trespass Ms. Isles with the change, reducing the trespass until June the 30th, 2023.
And we have a second on that. So we had the question called, so would you again call the roll?
Mr. Wildebohr.
Aye.
Ms. Bradford.
No.
Ms. Barnhart.
Yes.
Ms. Craybill.
Yes.
Ms. Mason.
No.
Mr. McManus.
Yes.
And Ms. Walker.
No.
So I believe that fails 4-3, is that correct?
It passed 4-3.
Oh, passes 4-3. Okay. Sorry. Put the numbers up. That passes 4-3.
So
we
now,
are-
do we have to continue to vote on Ms. Walker's? I mean, do we have, since we decided it, do we have to keep going down, or did we end the discussion?
I believe that ends the discussion, correct, Mr. Weber?
And I'm sorry, so this was a vote on Ms. Crayville's
Discussion.
motion to amend?
To amend, correct.
To amend, so all we voted on is the amendment, not.
To amend the amendment,
We've not voted on the actual motion yet.
and we have not voted.
That's correct.
What about my amendment?
So, but Mr. Weber, since we voted to uphold Ms. Crayville's motion, that makes a decision. So do we need to vote on anything else at this point?
No, we just
Yep.
voted on the amendment.
We just voted.
Not on
so
the motion.
We definitely have to vote on Ms. Barnhart's amendment. Our question to Mr. Weber is, do we have to vote on Ms. Walker's amendment that says time's already served? We're done.
That was a recommendation, though, wasn't it? It wasn't a motion.
Barnhart was a
It was
motion.
an amendment to Ms. Barnhart's original motion, which was.
So board members, if I'm tracking this correctly, there was an initial motion by Ms. Barnhart to uphold the decision that was seconded by Ms. Craybill. Following that motion, Ms. Walker made a motion to amend to uphold the decision, but shorten it to a period of 2 months.
Correct.
That motion was subsequently amended by Ms. Craybill, and that was to uphold but shorten it to June 30 of 2023. Ms. Craybill's motion to amend was just approved, is that correct? On a
Correct.
vote of 4-3,
That is correct.
Yes,
is that right?
yes.
4-3 to amend.
So now, do we vote on Ms. Walker's amendment, or did that amendment to the amendment handle it?
This decision's been
Mr.
made.
Chair, I'd recommend taking a 5-minute recess so we can sort through the procedural aspects of this.
Works.
Okay,
Let's do it right.
we are in recess for 5 minutes. Please meet back at 10 after.
So that's just you going to talk to her? Yeah.
But it has to be second.
Yes. Some of the motions don't have to be seconded.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
call the question is you.
Yes.
I've eaten salad in the last 3 years. Well, my son I'll sound single, you go, you remember Walker? He stopped the rail, stopped there. He almost called me, all the time. I guess all of these things, I hadn't heard from his name, but anyway, he and Walker. I still think they are into the private enforcement fund. The guys are through the nets, they never touch the bottom and all that stuff, crazy. Oh yeah. You know, what's it called? About $250 at least. Dr. Kennedy Temple retired, the OBGYN. One of them was doing it. I did that last year. I jumped the ditch. It's like nothing. It's been like ever since the last month. Since it knocked me. I did my knee. Back, get the 31st. But I jumped the ditch and it was kind of heavy when I hit it, my legs went.
All right, board, it's 10 after. If you would take your seats, please. Board, if I could ask you to retake your seats, please. Thank you for that brief break. I did discuss with Mr. Weber, and he did share that we do need to, at this point, vote on Ms. Walker's amendment, and then finally, the main motion that Ms. Barnhart made. So,
Mr. Chair.
yes, ma'am.
I know I do not want to complicate this, no comment from you. But I would like to amend it to make it 4 months instead of 2. I just feel like that's a middle ground to the ban to June 30th, which is additional 6 months.
Okay, so 4 months would be when?
I didn't have a calendar up. And I would add 2 months on the extension of what I originally had amended it to say, which today is the 9th of January. I guess that would, from today, that would put it to March, looks like March the 6th.
March 6th, okay. So that is okay, Mr. Weber? She wants to change.
My own
so the
amendment,
board,
not anybody else's.
So the board has voted in support of Ms. Crable's motion to amend, Ms. Walker's motion to amend. So procedurally, right now, the board is considering Ms. Walker's motion to amend as amended, as revised. And that is up for discussion.
That's the motion that so we're basically voting again on Ms. Crable's motion.
We're basically voting again on Ms. Crable's motion because all that did was revised essentially Ms. Walker's motion to amend. If the question before the board is Ms. Walker's motion to amend as revised by Ms. Crable's amendment that the board just approved. So essentially the same thing that Ms. Crable proposed.
Okay, so we need to vote again on the amended so we can vote on again. Ms.
The other, I mean,
While we're doing it.
so if the board wants to continue to discuss the relevant time period, that can certainly happen as part of the discussion now on Ms. Walker's motion to amend as amended. If there appears to be consent for a shorter time period or consensus, then that could help influence how individual members vote on the motion to amend as revised. What I'm saying is if there's a need for continued discussion, you can continue to discuss.
Would I need a second for that?
Yes.
Okay. So I have made an amended motion to mine.
Right.
Is
Go
anybody
forward.
willing to second or not?
Would anybody second Ms.
discuss.
Walker's motion to reduce the 6 months to 4 months?
Second.
Ms. Mason, okay. Is there any discussion of a 4-month? Yes, ma'am.
So when does this, the official trespass starts on December the 1st, right? Because that's when the letter came out?
That is my understanding.
Is that correct, Mr. Weber?
Yeah, I guess we need to get our dates correct.
And that's what I'm trying to
I
do.
am
because
pulling
if-
up the,
That, I'm looking at the
Trespass
letter, and the
notice.
letter came out on December the 1st. So if we are, no, I'm sorry, it came out on November the 3rd.
Yeah,
right.
effective immediately.
Yeah, okay.
Effective
Okay, November the
immediately.
3rd.
It has been 2 months.
The appeal was December 1st, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So November,
So it has been
December,
2 months.
January, February.
So that would go to,
Okay.
that would turn it from 2 months to 5 months. That, the decision.
So,
Instead
and
of 12.
what was your end date again? I'm sorry?
It was March, I forwarded 2 months from now, oh, hold on, so we're the 9th. I just went to the 6th of March, which is the first Monday. Well,
6. Okay, is there discussion on
March 6th.
Ms. Walker's amended motion? Yes. You guys throw me some curveballs right off, thank you. Is there any discussion on her motion? Yes, ma'am? Well, you
So
can
while I'm just
discuss it.
saying, I might as well just start since I brought it up. I
Sure.
would just say, I get it, it's a nice clean thing to say June 30th, but I just feel like we are setting a precedent, you're correct. We are upholding the decision, correct, but we're just not making it as long as June 30th. I think 5 months is a good cutoff. I mean, it's almost half a year. So that would be my argument to that.
So my add to this discussion is these instances that we saw were a month apart. So while we're talking months timeframe, the reality is there's a single meeting a month. And so looking at that, I feel like it seems like a long time, but in reality, the purpose of the meeting is a monthly meeting. And so
I've been a business owner for a long time. In a business, I hire people, I ask them to do their job, and when they make a decision, I look at their decision and uphold it, unless it's grievous. So I'm going to uphold the decision that our employees made.
Anybody else? Ms.
I was
Walker?
saying, it's not just one meeting a month, it's committee meetings, also town halls, or retreats, or anything else. It's not just one meeting a month. So I just wanted to kind of.
And to that point, Ms. Walker, because I agree that the accessibility is important. Everything is streamed, and that's something that I will continue to advocate for, that we're going to continue to do. But really, where we're seeing the disconnect is the call to audience participation piece, because she's able to email, she's able to call, she's able to talk to us in person and have these conversations. So respectfully, I just want to bring that to everyone's attention in our deliberation process.
Okay. At this point, is there any further?
One more comment.
Okay.
I would say, if you brought up call to audience, and however long this ban ends up being, is there any way that Ms. Alice can at least send in her call to audience, or anything we can do to not stop her First Amendment rights to speak?
And to that point, I know her husband, this is outside information, but her husband came and presented to us last month on her behalf. And so I think that there are alternative means to get her message in addition, but I think it's something we can consider when we discuss the format of our new meetings, but not at this time.
I move to call the previous question.
Well, this is the amendment.
This,
No, we got. Can I read? Should
I
I
wouldn't
restate the
move, I
motion,
would just
Mr. Chair?
do the vote.
okay,
Then
let's
we have
go
to
ahead and
vote
do
twice.
that. So,
Restate the motion, Mr. Chair?
The motion now, you, go ahead.
Should I mean, you
Yes, go
can,
ahead. No, go ahead.
absolutely.
Don't we have to
Alderman
vote on
Schreiber,
the call to
correct.
question?
Well, this is the
Was
question.
there, Mr. Wildebohr, did you retract your
I did
calling
retract
of the
mine.
question?
Yes, I did. I retracted.
Okay.
So the motion was to uphold, and I don't know if I'm going to get Ms. Crable's amendment in here right, but instead of in lieu of end of June 30th, I would propose March 6th as the end date for the
Okay,
ban.
for her being Ms. Isles being trespassed.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Bowie, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Wildebohr?
No.
Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Barnhart?
No.
Ms. Craybill?
No.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
No.
And Ms. Walker?
Yes.
That fails 5-2. Then we move up to the main question, which is Ms. Barnhart's motion.
Please restate it.
Please restate.
So the board is now, you're making this interesting. The board is now voting on Ms. Barnhart's motion as amended by Ms. Craybill's motion to amend, which upholds the superintendent's decision but reduces the trespass period from 12 months to June 30, 2023. You are now back to the main motion as revised.
Is there any debate on that? Ms.
I
Walker?
guess, well, and then just as a comment, I don't guess since we've decided that we are upholding but just reducing it to end of school year, that's what we're voting on. I don't know if there's any more debate.
Well, I just wanted-
Well, okay, that's fine.
All right.
Yes. In the event that that were to pass, I would like to amend to say that if the violation occurred again, that it would immediately bump back up to the full year, if that motion were to pass. Would you be agreeable to that? If the behavior happened again?
Well, that's for us, yeah, us to vote
So you're
on
making
that.
that amendment, that motion. Is there a second?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think
But
she hasn't
board
made the
members,
motion. You
I
have to
would
make the
recommend-
motion. You can't say if.
Procedurally,
I'm sorry?
I recommend from a procedural standpoint to vote on the main motion
Okay.
as already amended by Ms. Craybill's motion to amend, which was approved on a vote of 4-3. And if a board member wants to propose some other parameters around the decision, for that to be made through a separate main motion,
Okay.
or a motion to reconsider, or a motion to
Okay.
amend something that had
Got it.
previously been adopted.
Okay. Well,
You
that,
can make your motion after we vote on this one.
Gotcha.
all right, so we're back to Ms. Barnhart's motion, and her motion is to, originally was to uphold the decision of the assistant superintendent or superintendent, and then it was amended to have the period ending on June 30th. We had a first and second. Ms. Bowie, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Wildebohr?
Aye.
Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Barnhart?
Yes.
Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
No.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
And Ms. Walker?
No.
And again, passes 4-3. Are there any
No,
other?
I think that was 5-2, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
No, it was
Oh,
4-3.
4-3.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we add some caveat, I don't know the language, that the attorney can help me with that, but that in the event, if after this is lifted, the behavior were to occur again, that it would automatically kick in the additional time that was not enforced. Does that make sense?
Go back to the original.
Yeah, well, just pick up the remainder of the unfilled term, so to speak.
Unfilled trespass limit.
Yes,
So the rest of the
that's my
year.
motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second, Ms. Craybill. Is there any discussion?
I think my only point of discussion, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Barnhart?
My only point of discussion would be that 6-month period from the time that event occurred again, or just the fulfillment of the period, which would end on December 20th of 2023, or December 2023?
I'd say the 6 months from when the
when the-
began,
if-
happened again.
If it were
to happen again.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Mr. McManus?
Define happens again.
Oh, sorry, well.
Well, we're in it, we might as well just get deeper. But in fairness to everybody, what is again? You might
True.
think again, and she may think maybe, and I don't even know what you're talking about.
Whose discretion?
He's asking you to be more specific, I guess, about.
Since we're referring,
Ms. Isles?
Yeah,
that would mean if they are
well, okay,
reprimanded
I can
from the
clarify.
chair, if they're asked to leave and they don't,
Mr. Chair,
or asked to leave,
I would just say that's at the discretion of the decorum rules, wouldn't it be for the chair to decide?
that's what I'm asking.
That's what it should be.
You find changing it to at my discretion?
Yeah, or the discretion of the assistant superintendents that made the original trespass decree.
It's ultimately up to the chair, I think.
But I'm okay with it being UP.
Okay. Ms. Craybill?
I'm having a hard time with this. I think we should have voted on it before, but because the behavior I think that Ms. Bradford is getting to is if we have any more disruptive behavior from Ms. Isles.
Threatening, disruptive, or dangerous
Yes.
behavior,
A
right there in the
violation of policy 5020.
Yes.
If that happens again, then I think we should just pick up from the original letter, if we are allowed to do that. Otherwise, I would think that we would need to do a brand-new trespass. So can you weigh in on that, Jason, a little bit? Because I just think it's nebulous that, but unless we call it a probationary period, that she, and vote again to say that she really was on probation. I mean, am I making too much of it? I don't think it needs to be the assistant superintendent's job to go, okay, well, they shouldn't be, that they would decide and tell us, but the board chair can't really have that like little mini hearing to say, oh, you did it again, so now, we're going back to the original letter. So I'm just curious on how we can do that, even though I seconded it.
And those are good questions. So I would say what the board has already decided in this meeting is to uphold the decision of the superintendent, but to reduce the period to June 30 of 2023. If that is the final and only decision that the board makes, and an individual who's been trespassed engages in behavior that could lead to an additional trespass from school property, administration could theoretically set the start date for that, that new behavior and the trespass that results from it to be after the current trespass period ends. I would not recommend that the decision be placed in any individual board member's hands.
Okay.
Because if there is subsequent behavior that leads to a subsequent trespass decision from administration, that decision could be appealed to the board. And if individual member made the decision in the first place, then, that could lead to recusal issues. So the board has the option here of reconsidering its earlier decision or leaving it in place and then leaving to administration decisions about how to respond to subsequent behavior, if any.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Walker?
I feel like this is a bit of a precedence moment as well, because I feel like we are only supposed to hear the evidence and talk about this particular instance with Ms. Isles. I think what we've done is upheld the decision but shortened it. I think that if we start saying, well, we're going to extend it to the full based on someone's thought or whatever to decide, I just don't know that that's good, because what would happen if someone else kind of did the same thing? I mean, we're going to have to do another individual ban on people. I mean, like I say, we have to be mindful of the decisions we're making here. I think what we've done is made a decision. I think we should just stick to that decision. And then at that date, once that date is finished, it just starts anew. That's just my thoughts.
Ms. Barnhart?
And I would echo that sentiment, and if there was a situation where we had a violation of policy, then I believe that our assistant superintendent and the district would bring to us another hearing, and at that time, we'd make that deliberation.
Mr. McManus?
I understand where everybody's coming from, but in all fairness to everyone, our purpose in this decision is to let there be an understanding of the tolerance is not going to be accepted. I would like to believe that this ain't going to happen again, that hopefully this is sent as fair a message as we could collectively agree on, that we're not going to tolerate it, and we'll deal with that when it happens, rather than guesstimate. I think it puts us in a precarious situation, which I think Walker was right about bringing it up, and I think I understand, but I don't think we need to go there until it happens. And we've set a precedent, intended or not, I believe, probably legally, that what we can and will do.
Would you like to go forward with the motion, or would you like to rescind it?
I withdraw that motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that being noted, Ms. Bradford has rescinded her motion. With no further deliberation, do I, excuse me, I'm getting behind myself.
Mr. Wildebohr, I would ask if there's consensus on Ms. Bradford's withdrawal of her motion.
Yes.
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 All
Thank
in
you.
favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries 7-0.
Did we actually vote on Ms. Barnhart's?
Yes, we did.
We
Yes.
did? Okay.
We did.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, I was trying to make check marks.
With there being no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion. I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Bradford and Ms. Walker, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you for your time today.
Do we turn these whole notebooks back into Crystal?
Yes, let's please turn your whole notebook. Just leave it here on the table. Leave it here on the table. All your documentation.
Okay, I get to work with staff, get my laptop working.
Hey, you know what? See you guys tomorrow. Same bat channel, same bat time.
Yes. Did you say same bat? Did you say same bat time?
Sorry? I did.
Did you really?
Same bat time, same bat time.
And it won't hurt her.
No, that,
No, I didn't.
Now that's Brian's phone number, now you have it.
Josie. Where's Josie? I'll babysit. I'll babysit. I got two No,
Oh my God. I said, if you call the question, you have another vote, so don't call the question.
Oh, seriously, I got time now. Anyhow.
I mean, I love, I'm pretty partial to mine right now, so. One's about 7, no. Oh, we're ready.
no. Wait till they're 13. Yo, a better vocabulary. And also, all right, somebody trying to get
Yeah, it just, I can't log in to, see, I can get.
Okay, so you're logged into the computer. Okay.
Yeah, I'm into the computer, but I can't log in here.
Okay, so this is going to be a critical thing.